Hey everybody, it is Michelle and I'm here with Dana Marie and we are here for another episode of the Empowered to Advocate podcast. Super excited to talk about this topic with all of you today. You're like, what is the topic? Don't worry, we're going to tell you. That is one that has come up during a couple of our one-on-one coaching sessions, particularly during our Pay What You Can sessions at the beginning of the month. And it was this folks feeling kind of pressured to be in agreement with or to even make some really big decisions at the meeting.
Mhm.
So we just wanted to chat with you today about how to navigate that when that
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, just to jump right in, like Michelle said, this is something that came up in more than one of our Pay What You Can sessions recently. And I think what happens a lot of times is people, like Michelle said, feel the pressure to make decisions at this meeting, even when they aren't sure they agree with what the team is proposing, or they know for sure they don't agree with something that's on the table for the IEP, whether it's a service, a goal, a placement, whatever the case may be. And a lot of times parents and caregivers don't actually know what to do and what the next step is, right? You're in this meeting, you're on the spot, the team proposes something. Perhaps it's even like out of left field. It's something that like you didn't think that they were going to propose or that you weren't expecting. And now you're sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I have to respond to this. I have to say something in response to this. So we wanted to just do a super quick episode today and just give you a few sort of canned lines, honestly. Canned lines that you can say back to the school team that gets you sort of out of an awkward situation if you're in one, but also buys you a little bit of time in terms of making a decision. So I'm going to start with one that we gave verbatim to one of our clients recently and want to share with you. But if the school team proposes something and you're like, how did we get to this goal? How did we get to this placement? How did we get to, whatever the this is in this particular case, you can just say, you can ask, listen, and you're coming from a place of curiosity, you're coming from a place of genuinely wanting to understand, but you can say, I'm curious about how the team came to this decision. What
Mm.
information did you use? What data did you use to make this decision, to propose this goal, to propose this placement, to make this service change, to decrease services, to increase services? Like I said, whatever the case may be, doesn't really matter, but it's a super simple way for you to kind of take a pause and say, I don't think I agree, but also I don't know how we got here. So asking the team, putting it back on them and saying, I'm really curious, how did we get to this decision? How did we get to whatever is being proposed at this meeting? And that can actually do a couple of things. Like I said, it can buy you some time as a parent or caregiver, but it can also cause the school team to kind of pause so that they have to think about, okay, how did we come to this decision? How did we come to this proposal? And maybe they have data to share with you that they hadn't shared already, or maybe they have information that you weren't aware of, or student work that you haven't seen, right? It's a good moment for both sides, for lack of a better term, to kind of take a moment to pause and say, okay, I understand what you're proposing. I understand what you're saying, but how did we get to this?
Yeah, I think if we are thinking about how an individualized education plan, an IEP, is supposed to be data driven and instructional strategies and what we're proposing to support a student should be driven by data. That's how we know if the interventions that we're putting into place are working or not working, or if we need more or if we need less. So definitely that pause of, I'm wondering if you can show me
Mm.
the information, the data that, or where you came up with this proposal, or what is driving this proposal. I think that's a really, really important one, Dana Marie.
And sometimes, quite frankly, and this just is the way that it is. Sometimes there isn't immediate information or data or something that the team can give you on the spot. And so the follow up that we try to have parents and caregivers sort of tuck away to is, okay, totally fine. I'm definitely going to need more information about this. After the meeting, can you send me, right? And it's sort of you're going from the same list. You're asking for the same thing, but after this, I understand we're not going to get to it during this conversation, but after this meeting, can you send me any of the progress monitoring data, any student work samples that you think sort of apply to this decision? Can you send me, am I missing a report? Am I missing a piece of a report? Right? It's any information that would help you to understand whatever the proposal is, whatever the IEP proposal is. And we'll get back to this at the end. We will remind you at the end. You don't have to accept anything at an IEP meeting. You don't have to sign anything. In fact, you should not at an IEP meeting. And because of that, it does leave some room for you to ask these sort of first two questions, right? Either on the spot, what data was used to get us to this point, or I understand that the team does not have available this information for me now, but it is something that I need more information on. Please follow up in an email with X, Y, and Z, sort of whatever applies to your situation.
Yeah. And I think that unfortunately, the time that we typically see districts trying to rush a decision is over bigger decisions that actually probably need more thought.
Mm-hmm.
Extended evaluations,
Mm.
placement changes, going from full inclusion to a substantially separate placement, or vice versa, going from something that's more specialized as a placement to something that is more inclusive. And sometimes the district, we would like to think that this is always very thoroughly based on data and they have the data to show, and most often they do, but sometimes it also has to do with the numbers game or with budgeting, and they want it done before the end of the school year so they can get their numbers all set for
Yeah.
the fall. And those things are all important too. But here's what I have to say, that maybe y'all should have been thinking about that before right this moment. If you need a flash decision right here, right now, then that means that you've probably been thinking about this for a longer period of time. And of course, sometimes there are very set special circumstances
Of
where a
course.
student, your child, maybe it's really not a safe placement for
Yeah.
them anymore. There's like other things, and you still, I would always recommend, unless you are going in already knowing that that's what they're going to propose and you are like, that's what you want and you are already aware of what is happening, then sure. And obviously, your decision is always your decision. We're just here to guide and give suggestions. But walking into a meeting and this being the first time you've ever heard of a different placement or the words extended evaluation, and we can talk about what an extended evaluation is in a different episode, but like those really big major kinds of decisions, that is the when you can throw up that timeout sign and be like, timeout, I need more information, I need more time. And then after you step out of that meeting, following up with an email with, at the meeting you made this proposal, here are the things I need to see from you in order to make an informed decision. And you have the right to do that.
Yeah, and Michelle alluded to this, but like sometimes you feel like, and honestly, it's April, and it does start to happen at this time of the school year. But sometimes you might be feeling this sense of urgency coming from the school team. Unless it's like dire circumstances, like Michelle said, you do not need to feel the sense of urgency, right? On your end, right? You always have the right to take a pause. You always have the right to understand the information being given to you. You always have the right to take the proposed IEP, take the new proposed goal, services, etc. Take the time to look at them, right? Review them with like, another parent or a family member or an advocate you're working with, whomever the case may be. You might be feeling the sense of urgency coming at you, but we encourage you in these moments to try to like take a pause, take a deep breath, and say, okay, I don't need to feel frantic. Just because this feels frantic doesn't mean that I need to feel frantic. Like I can take a beat, I can ask for these pieces, I can ask for these things, and we can use that information to guide next steps, which brings us to sort of our last one of these sort of canned phrases, right? There is going to come a point when you ask this first question, like, what data informed this decision? What information did you use to get us here? And then you ask the follow-up question. Okay, you don't have it here, but please send it to me after
Mhm.
this meeting. There are going to be instances where after those sort of two levels or layers of question, what's going to come to light is that the information doesn't actually exist, right? The information, the data isn't there, it doesn't exist. And so the last thing that we encourage you to say is like, it looks like we all need more information to make an informed decision about this. Can we do some updated testing? Can we collect more data on these specific objectives or this specific goal? Can we do some more progress monitoring on this particular area, whatever the case may be? Because there will be times, we hope that it's not super often, but there will be times when you've asked sort of these first two layers of questions and maybe you're getting blank stares and maybe the answer is just like, we got nothing, we don't know. That's the time when you say, okay, then we need to take a real beat here and I need to request that we, like I said, do some updated testing, move up the reevaluation maybe a couple months, or collect more data, or whatever the case may be. And that's just in those circumstances where you'll be able to tell if the information just doesn't exist, right? It's one thing if they haven't shared it with you, and it's another thing if it doesn't actually exist. And that you also have the right to make sure that it does, and you have the right to ask for that as well.
Yeah. So I think the biggest takeaway from this, and this is a nice shorty episode, but the biggest takeaway is, especially this time of year, districts and caregivers can feel this real sense of urgency. Like, oh my gosh, the school year is 75% of the year over. There's only one quarter left. We need to get all these things buttoned up all nice
Yep.
and neat
Yep.
for the next school year. And if I don't make a decision now, and if I don't sign this, then things, Charlie or Sammy isn't going to be where they need to be in the fall. Well, maybe these conversations should have been having all school year and shouldn't have been just happening in the spring. And also, perhaps, just having these conversations then better improves communication for even
For
future
sure.
bigger conversations, or even the smaller conversations,
For sure.
and allowing the school team to be that much better at their jobs, to be better at collecting data so they're making good proposals and having that preparedness for meetings as well.
Yeah.
But the biggest takeaway is, at any meeting, you do not need to sign anything except the attendance sheet, and sometimes like initial that they've given you the parent procedural safeguards, right? Those kinds of things. Obviously, that's different than signing a proposed IEP or even a release of information to send. There's there's not going to be that big of a difference between signing right then, right there at that meeting versus in a week.
Or the next day by email, honestly.
But what could happen is you could have signers regret
Mm.
after feeling almost forced
Mm-hmm.
or rushed into signing something that you didn't fully understand or have your questions fully answered. And then you have that sense of like in the pit of your stomach, like, what? I just don't even really understand what I did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better to take a pulse and take a night, take a couple of days, take a week, and then sign, than to feel like you have to sign right then, right there, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with that, obviously, if you have questions, reach out to us. We're trying to highlight in the next couple weeks some of the things that came up on these Pay What You Can sessions. And like we said earlier, this one was a big one, sort of that flat freeze moment inside of a meeting when you're not sure what to say or not sure what to do. But if you have other questions, things that come up in meetings or things that come up when you're maybe reviewing an eval or an IEP, send those questions our way. We would love to do an episode on the topics that you are interested in. And with that, thank you so much for listening to the Empowered to Advocate podcast. We will be back so soon with another episode. So make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure that you like wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you download podcasts. And we will talk to you soon. Bye everyone.